I just got back from the most delicious 8 days in Tokyo, and now I'm going to teach myself how to make all the Japanese food I ate, starting with tonkatsu. I'm going to start with the different cuts of pork you can use when making tonkatsu, whether to brine the pork or not, how to crumb and fry it nicely, and of course how to make a delicious tonkatsu sauce. I've got 2 pieces here today. One is some loin with fat on it. The other is a very small piece of tenderloin that came from this bone-in chop. I'm obviously after the juiciest tonkatsu possible, and one way in which we can do that is through brining. This is where the salt breaks down the protein, so when it's cooked it doesn't squeeze out as much moisture. 3 different pieces of pork, 3 different methods. This one has had no brine, this one has had a 2% dry brine, and this one has had a 3% wet brine. When they've been cooked, I can then compare them to see which I like the most. Moving on to the crumbing, I'm first going to coat the pork in flour to help the egg adhere, also to create a barrier to trap in moisture. Stick with one wet hand and one dry hand when crumbing to avoid too much mess. In my research, I discovered that Japanese chefs use nama panko to get a really light, crisp coating on their pork. That's fresh panko crumbs. I can't get that in Australia. I'm using dry, so expect slightly more crunchy, firmer texture in the coating. It seems to be chef's preference to double coat the panko crumbs, so I've gone for one of them double coated as a comparison. That's the pork crumbed. In part 2, I'm going to look at different options for tonkatsu sauce. With our pork crumbed, let's consider the other side of the equation, which is our tonkatsu sauce. You could put together what turned out to be a really average tasting tonkatsu sauce using pantry staples like this. It's not very good though. Good Japanese restaurants will make their own house-made tonkatsu sauce. Did find a great looking recipe from Adam Lior that uses simmered down fruits and vegetables as a base for the tonkatsu sauce, so I'm going to try that one instead. I ended up adjusting the recipe and adding a little bit more sugar. You can find the recipe below. So much more flavour in this one. Now that I've got a sauce I'm actually happy with, it's time to fry the pork. Usually I fry breaded proteins around 170 degrees Celsius, but I read online that tonkatsus usually fry between 175 and 180 degrees. I'm assuming in order to get the exterior crispy without overcooking the protein. I'm not that confident in timing for this, so I'm going to use a thermometer to check it as I go. I'm aiming to pull it just before 63 degrees so it can rise up to that temperature for a perfect cook. Once out of the oil, it's straight on with some flaky salt. And here we have all our pork fried. All the tonkatsu is now fried, including the little tenderloin pieces. Now it's time to slice and put together my little tonkatsu set. The trick to get nice slices is one firm motion all the way through with a sharp knife. This is the unbrined, this is the dry brined, and this is the wet brined. So the tonkatsu I ate in Tokyo came as a little set. So obviously we need our pork on the plate. I also noticed that they turned one piece upwards so you could see the cook on it. The sets also came with some finely shredded cabbage, some miso soup, some short grain rice, of course the sauce, and last but not least, your own personal mortar and pestle. This was one of my favourite aspects of the meal. Inside the mortar and pestle would be a little toasted sesame seeds, and you would grind them yourself until about 70% ground. You could really smell the aroma of the toasted sesame seeds, and you'd finish by pouring over your tonkatsu sauce, which you could then dip your katsu into. The perfect dipper. Now, after my visit and doing some research online on how to make this, I discovered that there is a correct way to eat tonkatsu. Now, you must start by trying the pork without anything on it, in order to get a real appreciation for what the chef has done. After that, you can dip and then enjoy in between the bites of cabbage, rice, and sips of your miso. Now, I did cook 3 pieces of pork, so let's have a little comparison, shall we? Here we have the unbrined, this one's the dry brined, and lastly the wet brined. Time to taste them all and see which one I think is the best. Unbrined, definitely the driest, but these other 2 are just far more juicy. By far my favourite is the wet brined. It is significantly juicier than the rest. I think I actually cooked it better too. And maybe my favourite overall is a small bit of tenderloin. Now that I've learned how to make pretty decent tonkatsu, the next part of this episode is going to be making katsudon.